a guy in a van pulls up and tries to grab you that's unarmed, tries to throw you in the back, what would you do? And every 6,500 kids have said, I'd fight, kicks, punch. And I always say, look, if that guy shows up once a day, every day, is there going to be a day where you just throw your hands up in the air and say, okay, just take me, do whatever you want with me? No kid has ever said yes. I said, look, there's not that big of a stretch between that situation when life is hard. Life is the guy in the van. We have to have that fire in our belly. And why this is so important is because of suicide and suicidal thoughts.
Hello, and welcome to the Positively Healthy Mom podcast. I'm your host, Laura Ollinger, teen and young adult well-being coach and founder of Positively Healthy Coaching. Today, I'm very excited to introduce you to a new guest of mine, Dr. Jerry Weichman, who is a clinical psychologist, adolescent specialist, and parenting expert with nearly 3 decades of experience. He's also the author of How to Deal, which is a teen survival guide, and founder of the Weichman Clinic in Costa Mesa, California. It's Teen Brain Program, which I can't wait to hear more about, and one of the most comprehensive cognitive and psychological evaluations for kids and adolescents. So, do we call you Dr. Jerry? What do we call you, Dr. Weichman?
You can call me whatever you want. I never did this for the title or for ego.
Oh, okay. Well, we're just going to call you Dr. Jerry for today, if that's okay. So
that works.
Man, I'm so excited to just dive in because I know you're really passionate about helping parents reclaim their drive, focus, and on energy so they can be the best versions of themselves to be able to parent kids. So tell us just to get started, what are some ideas that you have for that and how can that help promote resilience within the family?
Yeah. So I've, as you said, I've been doing this 27 years now. And starting a couple of years ago, I started watching parents really kind of fall off the map. They were just really struggling. It looks different out there. It feels different out there when you're crossing other adults. You don't see a lot of eye contact. You don't see a lot of smiles. You don't see a lot of energy out, and people look 10% zombied, basically. And I think that for anybody who's a parent today, we haven't had a 10-year period like this in our life where we've had so much instability and stress. And there's a lot of factors to that, but I don't think that as adults, we realize the toll that all of this has taken on us. And so what prompted me to create this national platform was the fact that I started seeing parents not be proactive anymore, not just with their own kids and their kids' mental health, it was with themselves. And as soon as that starts to happen, the whole family starts falling apart. So I really wanted to get on a greater stage to try to make a difference for families. And so we rolled out on the Raising Families podcast, we rolled out the mental health tools that we utilize here that work all day, every day. And we wanted to be able to create something for parents where it's for you to listen to, make sure you're putting the air mask on yourself first and then teach it to your kids. And by doing that 1-2 punch, that's what benefits the family. And some of those examples of tools would be resilience, like teaching your family how to be mental fighters where things get tough, we get tougher, pushing back against the chaos and stresses of life rather than giving into it. It would be things like taking action. We have had since the pandemic a huge uptick in overthinking with kids and parents where negative things happen that they can't control, and they put what I call the mental magnifying glass on their problem and intensify the problem and the duration of the problem. There's a multitude of tools that parents, especially today, need to be aware of and to teach their kids. And one of the bigger ones is the concept of control, which is the only control we have is how we react and respond. And as a parent, there's so much. This is such a faster and busier and rapid pace of life than it was for our parents raising us. And our kids are the closest ones to us, and they can really get to us too. So one of the biggest things that parents need to be aware of constantly is being mindful of what you can and can't control, because the only thing you can control is how you react and respond to what happens and the effort you're putting the things that you do. And one of the concepts that really helps me as a parent with struggling with this is the statement of this person or this situation does not control how I think or feel. I do. And once you can get back into that silo of where you have control, you can do a lot with that. You can stay balanced for your family. You can provide that stability. You can actually utilize mental health tools from that point, and they'll actually work. So there's a lot of tools out there that I want families to be aware of.
Yeah, that's really bringing to mind some individuals that I know that get very emotional about what they see in the news. And it's very much kind of like seeping into their everyday life. And I mean, these are not my clients of mine, these are just personal people I know. And I try to help them understand that concept that, like, those things are happening whether you know about them or not, but, like, how is this affecting you, and are you even able to do anything about that? I'm not, like, thinking people need to put on blinders and being completely oblivious to what's happening in the world. Like, there's gotta be this balance. So, how can you encourage, like, I understand, like, those things are out of our control, but how can you have a balance with, like, have wanting some awareness with what's happening, but then feeling stuck and emotional about being powerless about those things?
Yeah. Well, the big thing for us as parents, most of us grew up with we knew life prior to the internet. So
Right.
we're in a completely different ball game now where everybody's opinions, all the information that is streaming through us, the kids' sports schedules, people's texts, I mean, we're just getting bombarded. And to be honest with you, we're not meant to be this close together. There's a reason when you go into an 8-person elevator with 7 other people, you feel uncomfortable. You smell them, you
Mhm.
hear one chewing,
Mm.
one sniffling. And it's kind of like what it's like for me on, with technology today. And so
Mm.
we have to be aware of the fact that most often when we open up any of these apps, any of these news feeds, we're never going to, rarely ever, if ever, are we going to come out the other side feeling better. We always feel worse. And with
Mhm.
all the things that are going on today and how stressful and hard it is to be a parent, this is one of the few things that both you and your kids can control is whether you choose to open that and to look at that. Maybe you
Mhm.
give yourself a time period. I really want to know what's going on. I'm going to give myself 5 minutes or 3 minutes, but you got to set a timer because everything in that thing's been designed to be addictive and to trap you there so that you
Right.
aren't aware of what time it is and how much time goes by. But once you're seeing things like that, it's really about action, right? It's thoughts create problems, actions fix problems. So what you have to deduce besides can I control this or not is there an action I can take to make this better? Is there an action I can take if this is a cause that I'm concerned about to do something? And that's what you have to
Ah.
start thinking about is the action
Mhm.
that you take, not the problem. This again goes back to the
Mhm.
overthinking thing for me. It's like we're just sitting
Mhm.
here focusing and ruminating on problems, and all we're doing is kicking our own butts. And as
Mhm.
adults with kids, our kids are learning how to do this as well. And we've got to change this up so that we're more balanced, we're in a better place. We're teaching our kids how to do this because we're the immigrants to technology. Our kids are the natives. They were born into bondage
Right.
in this. And so
Mhm.
they don't know any different. And it's our job as parents to not just try to be as stable for our kids as possible, but to teach them not just how to navigate technology and what it's really about, but how to navigate life.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. I love that idea because that does then give control back to the listener. If they do see something that they feel outraged by, then they have the choice. Like, what can I do about this? Can I do anything about it? And if I can't, then maybe I don't listen to that stuff so much. Maybe I focus on what's the most important to me, which for parents is their kids that are right in front of them, that live with them, and maybe that thing people just need to kind of reprioritize what's important to them. So
Well,
maybe some
there's
food for
there's
thought.
that for sure, 100%, but there's also an underlying factor that goes with that. It's
Mhm.
where our mind is in time, right? So
Mhm.
what you're talking about is being present with your kids, which is what we
Mhm.
definitely don't do enough of today as parents. And
Mhm.
neither do our
Mhm.
kids do that with us, but they will only do what they're allowed to do by us and how we handle them. But what you're talking about is something comes in that we see that's negative, and it's a tendency to people have a tendency to hold on to it, right? So now it goes into the past, but we're still bringing our past to our present. And we're not going to be as effective in the present when we're holding on to stuff that we're still bothered by and thinking about. And so, one of the episodes we talk about is where our mind is in time. It's so important for us to learn how to not hold on and collect stuff in the past. These are the people that hold grudges or replay situations or news feeds that they saw or problems that doesn't do anything except make things worse. Because if you're in the past in your mind, you're going to have much higher likelihoods of being depressed or angry or both. And that's where a
Mhm.
lot of people are today is they're just collecting the things that go by. They're not in the moment. And our kids have a lot more anxiety. They're in the future. They're making assumptions
Mm,
about how things are going to go, who might be there, what might happen, and they're trying to tell the future, and that's a square playground hole. So that's where stress and anxiety live.
right.
So what we're talking about is you have to get back into the here and now by identifying your five senses: what you see, what you smell, what you taste, what you hear, what you physically feel on your body, not in your body. On your body is the chair on your butt and your back, or the cold air on your exposed skin. But when we can get back to the moment, to the here and now, the present becomes a warm, protective little bubble that will keep us safe from anything that just happened or may happen in the future. And it's where we really need to practice to be as parents and then teach our kids how to do that.
Yes. Well, I have an interesting question for you then, because something just came up with I mentioned I have four teenagers, and one is, planning for his future. He's thinking ahead. My oldest is about to graduate. So she's kind of in the same boat where we're thinking about careers, majors, colleges, things like that. And it's just so interesting because what is happening with just not my own kids, but my clients and just other people's kids are, what does the future hold? And everybody's talking
Hmm.
about AI and will a job exist for me? And how will now there's going to be two classes of people instead of three. And it's like, whoa, like that is not happening yet. That is in the
Yes.
future. And what good does it do us if we're kind of just like fear mongering all this whole AI situation? So what would be like advice that you would give to a teenager who does, I'm happy and feeling proud that my kids are being responsible, thinking of their future, planning ahead without like we want to encourage that, but we also don't want to like feed into the fear. So how could you like hold both of those at the same time?
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, to their credit, this is a very tough time launching out of high school, launching into college, launching from college into the real world. And part of that is because they have had every step laid out through high school, which is if you do this, this is going to happen. If you do this, this is going to happen. And there's predictability there. And so
Mm-hmm.
when it's time to launch out, even to go to college, if the kids have an opportunity, it's scary. There is so much of the unknown. There are no steps. It's kind of like they climb to the top of this mountain peak and everybody celebrates it and they spend the summer up there together. And then all of a sudden, one kid jumps one way, another kid jumps another way. And then it's our kid's turn to jump. And the person goes, okay, jump. You're like looking down. All I see is clouds. What's down there? Like, don't worry, everybody lands on their feet. That's scary, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I first and foremost get that. But the other piece of that is, it's really so much about not what's out there, but about your action and reaction to it. And what our kids need is they need good self esteem. They need good self concept. They didn't know who they are. And they base their self concept, unfortunately, so many of these kids off of things outside of them, like how well they do
Mm-hmm.
in school, how many likes, followers, how well they play sports, what they look like. You know, most of these variables are variables that constantly change. So when one of those goes down, you go down with it. And that's not real self esteem. Self esteem is knowing the characteristics that you're bringing to the table and that make you the whole package, but you never have to brag or talk about it. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
I am caring, I'm loving, I'm a hard worker, I'm a good friend, I'm loyal. You can put attractive in there, you can put a good student in there, but there's so much more to you than how you look or perform in life. And those are the
Mm-hmm.
key concepts that kids need in order to be able to withstand going out into the unknown, combined with resilience, which is I'm never going to give up. The more that pushes down, the more I'm going to push back. I'm not going to get sad and down too frequently. I'm going to get mad and use it as a vehicle to push myself through. You can put those things together and helping those kids to be in the moment, knowing that they're bringing a quality product to the table, they're strong, they're mentally strong, and they just have to keep going and they'll figure it out. Most kids do figure it out when they've got those concepts and tools down pat.
Yes. Okay. I love that. It's very encouraging. Kind of exactly what a teen and parent might want to have in their tool belt to be able to share with their teenagers.
Well,
So,
there's one
yeah.
more that goes with that. Sorry,
Okay.
it's my belief is there's a process and flow almost to life, right? Like
Mm,
you have an idea of what you're supposed to do or where you're supposed to go, what job you're supposed to get, what school you're supposed to go to, and you think you're supposed to be on this track. And life has a way of putting these 45-degree angles in front of you, and it really looks like it's screwing you, but it's really banging you to where you're supposed to be. I mean, you look back on your life and so many. Let's take marriage and spouses. you think of a lot of people met in college, right? And you think about all the different things that had to happen in order to put those two people together. And
Mm,
so there's something, so when if we can help our kids with the concept that is, hey, look, you're going down the river, but it's carrying you and it's carrying you to where you're supposed to be. You can swim to different places. That's a stress reliever for those kids, other than versus thinking I have 100%, I have to control this whole thing when they really don't have much.
yes. I love that. Because then it's like, yeah, you're not working so hard. You're just allowing things to work for you. Kind
Hmm.
of just there's
Correct.
energy, this connection with
Life will
just
lead you.
everything that. Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's beautiful. That's a lot easier. Pill to swallow. No pun intended to anything else in your life. Just a quick word before we get back to the episode. If you have a teen daughter heading off to college and you've quietly wondered what happens when she's there and I'm not, when something goes wrong at 11 p.m. and she can't call me, that worry is exactly why I built Positively Healthy University. It's a 3-hour live workshop just with me and a group of 10 girls where she'll get to build the emotional toolkit no college prep class covers. How to sit with hard things, how to regulate without reaching for her phone first, how to build a real community when she gets there. I have got 2 sessions this summer, so head to positivelyhealthycoaching.com/PHU for dates and to grab her spot. I have capped at 10 girls on purpose. Okay, back to the show. So yeah, I actually want to find out more about your clinic and kind of what you do. And I know you are really well known for, I love brain health. I'm a big fan of brain health. And it's so important to have that knowledge, especially for parents to understand that, there's these biological processes happening inside the brain and to really respect them, that the changes that the teenagers are going through. So tell us more about the Weichman Clinic.
Yeah, the Weichman Clinic was my answer in probably 2011 to what I saw was my brain's always worked with what's the problem, what's the fix. And so I started just seeing gaping holes in child and adolescent mental health. You had a psychologist here, a psychiatrist over there. They don't communicate. They have different views of what the primary issue is. Families were running around like a chicken without a head. You had,
Mm.
you know, we got some really poor evaluations in where they were templated and somebody forgot to change the name, and that was the gold
Oh my
standard
goodness.
that we were going off of, and teachers and in school districts. And the whole thing was kind of a mess. You had therapists that were just treating a kid, and parents weren't involved in the process. No one's treating the whole family system.
Mm,
So I figured there's
mm-hmm.
got to be a better way to do this, and it took 2 years to complete it. But what we have now is we have someone we treat the whole family system. So parents come in, we meet with them, we meet with their kid, we follow back up. We actually talk to parents about things that are going on with their kid and what they
Mm-hmm.
need to start working on because they spend so much more time with them than we will
Right. That's
on
exactly
on
my approach as well. Yes.
right. So
Yes.
it's like, here's how you
Mm-hmm.
start boosting self-esteem. Here's how you start countering when your kid's really being down and negative. And here's how often we're going to need to work with you, work with your kid. We also brought in so many services that families would need. So if we spin our tires for 4 to 8 sessions, we might not be with the right provider who has subspecialties in child adolescent, or we might need to do an evaluation to see what's really primary with this. So we're making sure we have the right treatment method and provider in front of somebody. We can bring in psychiatry, neuropsychological evaluations, couples counseling, family therapy. So we can actually put an entire team around a family system to identify what's wrong and get all those pieces fixed up and turned around.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's amazing. And that's where I hope the rest of the world kind of catches up to that model,
Agreed.
because that's what I see is just like, they bring you one puzzle piece and they're like, here's this piece, do the puzzle. And you're like, no, no, no. Where are the rest of the pieces?
And as a
Right?
parent, look, there's nothing worse than I can tell you as a parent myself, there's nothing worse than seeing your kids struggle and suffer and not being able to help them, and let alone
Right.
not knowing what is wrong in order to find help for your kid. That is an
Hmm.
awful feeling as a parent.
Yes. Yes. Well, I'm excited to learn so much about this. And I assume that people can travel from out of state to come see you. Or is it just in state clients or patients?
Well, we can do therapy with anybody in California because that's where we are. But for our Team Brain program and the evaluation Team Brain program, that's a separate piece. That was my answer to, okay, everybody wants to know what's wrong, and it's hard to tell people what's wrong with fact and validity behind it. So you come in, you get these cases where you have these kids with 8 different diagnoses, or
Mm,
if you have complex medical problems combined with psychological problems, it's really hard to sift out what's really
yes.
driving what. And so a lot of hospitals have trouble with those things. And so
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to create a program that really I went through it, made every possible factor a sifter to see where does this end up and what's really primary. So the team brain program, anybody can come in and fly in. And we've done that. We've had people come in from out of state. We've had people come in from out of the country to be able to find out from a psychological, family systems, neurological, psychiatric, on top of having testing where the team meets together after and has their individual conclusions laid on top of one another so we can discuss what's really happening. And then we've got the testing and the data that shows validity that we're all right once we agree on what this is, what this is not. And so we can
Mm,
sift through all these different problems medically and psychologically and sit with the family at the end of it and say, hey, here's what this is. This is the primary issue. This is
mm-hmm.
what the treatment needs to be for this issue. And it's such a relief, especially for families that have gone through, years of what's wrong, to be able to have clarity and data to
Yes.
prove it. A lot of moms usually break down crying because it's just a relief that they know what's wrong. And because a lot of
Mm,
people out there chase byproduct symptoms, right? The
mm-hmm.
kid's
Mm-hmm.
angry. Well, the kid has oppositional defiant disorder. No, like
Mm,
that's a byproduct issue. Like you got to
right.
identify what the core issue is and treat it. And that's what
Right.
we try to do in the Teen Brain program and at the Weichman Clinic.
That's amazing. And are you able to bring in any nutritional elements to that? Any kind of modifiable life factors like diet, sleep, exercise, stress management? Is that kind of part of what is being evaluated as well?
Yeah, absolutely. That's all part of the intake process. That's all part of the recommendations. If there's things that are outside of our scope that we want to refer out to, then we can refer out to those people.
Okay, very cool. Okay, awesome. So moving along, let's talk about, because you do work with kids of all ages. And so, how can a family really raise very resilient kids, but starting in a younger age group, like starting elementary school, before they're really hitting these big pressure time periods that we're talking about with our kids?
Yeah, well, thank you for that because that's exactly in line with what one of my missions is to get these tools and information. I want to help families across the country with everything I've learned in my career, but my hope and goal in creating this national platform for everybody, and that's for free in perpetuity, is that the early elementary school parents get a hold of it because there is no guide
Mm,
and they prep like crazy when they're pregnant. It's like what to expect when they're expecting. They make sure they have a pediatrician. And then when it comes to mental health, it's so convoluted out there and there's so much misinformation and ineffective tools that they don't know where to start and what do I need to lay the foundation for to get my kid ready. But my hope is that people access this information in elementary school because there's so many things that your kids should need to know by the time they hit middle school when the adversity starts. And if you can
mm-hmm.
arm your kids with things like resilience, the reduction in mental health problems is going to be profound. Now, when it comes to resilience, to me, it's literally the foundation of mental health. Things get tough. We have to get tougher. I really do believe that
Yeah.
God or life or whatever you believe in doesn't give us things that we can't ultimately handle. And what's
Mm-hmm.
dropped in our lap is not meant for us to be overwhelmed by or down about. It's meant for us to overcome, learn and change and grow from. And in doing so, it leads us to who we're supposed to be and where we're supposed to be next in our life. These are just hurdles. And you have to clear a hurdle by a millimeter. And so teaching our kids how to be pushed back against life, how to be that
Mm,
spring, that the more that comes down on you life, the more you have to push back will help your kids tremendously because life's always going to be peaks and valleys for all of us. But when your kids has resilience, you turn those valleys into dips. And it's hard to instill this in your kids, but the way to do this is it's just the saying, hey, things get tough in this family, we get tougher. Or when the kids were younger, I coach a lot of teams. And so when the kids were young, they all cry when they're really little for non-pain related injuries. And I was trying to instill the whole team with resilience, which is,
uh-huh.
hey, don't get sad, like get mad, like go out there and do
Mm,
something about it,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, because
But
that gives you
and
energy. Yeah.
anger can be a good vehicle for
Mhm.
resilience, right? If
Yeah.
used the right way. Um,
Mhm.
it can be effective. And this is a very visual generation. So they need visuals, and my brain works visually. So I've got analogies
Mhm.
for all this stuff. The one we use for
Mhm.
resilience
I
is
love
like
analogies. Yeah.
a guy in a van pulls up and tries to grab you that's unarmed, tries to throw you in the back. What would you do? And every 6,500 kids have said I'd fight, kicks, punch. And I always say, look, if that guy shows up once a day, every day, is there going to be a day where you just throw your hands up in the air and say, okay, just take me, do whatever you want with me?
Mm.
No kid has ever said yes. I said,
Mhm.
look, there's not that big of a stretch between that situation when life is hard. Life is the guy in the van. We have to have
Mm.
that fire in our belly. And why this
Mhm.
is so important is because of suicide and suicidal thoughts, is because
Yes.
when kids give up, then they start to get flooded with depression, anxiety, stress, and then they get overwhelmed quickly. And when they get overwhelmed, if they don't have tools to navigate themselves, then their first
Mhm.
natural default setting is death. It's what we call suicidal ideation. Now, a much
Mhm.
smaller percentage of that population actually attempts, but I can't tell you the increase in the number of kids we see that own that they have been thinking about death. It's it's
Mhm.
it's it's up so much because they're not able to navigate how they're feeling, and they're not running their foundation with resilience.
As you're speaking, of course, things come in, and it's not on our agenda, but would it be okay if you talked about your advice for bullying? Because, when I think of bullying, I think of having a resilient kid, have someone being able to either let something, kind of roll off their back, to not really take this situation to heart so much. But what I find is a lot of times the parents kind of get like sucked down into it. They become then the victims, and then their child's the victim, and we're the victim. And then it's like this big bad bully. And it's like this, I'm like, oh my gosh, like somebody has to be the leader here, right? And so, what is your advice for the moms who either have had a child who maybe has experienced some cyberbullying or physical bullying, in person bullying, or perhaps their child was the one doing that? What is just kind of your general stance on that?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about what, by definition, what it is first, because what you see is a percentage of the population that as soon as something happens, they're like, my kid's getting bullied, or the kid's like, I'm getting
Mhm.
bullied. Um, the definition of bullying is, it's number one, it's a repeated event. And
Mhm.
number two, it's power imbalanced. Someone's going after somebody smaller, younger, weaker. And three, the intention is to hurt or degrade somebody. And
Mhm.
it's a repeated event. So
Mhm.
that's by definition what it is. Now, let's just talk about whether it's bullying or not. It's mean kids, okay?
Yeah.
The conversation needs to be, look, if you don't deal, the mean kids are not big, intimidating, mean kids. Even if they're angry, even if they're physical, they feel really small and inferior, because if you look at how
Mhm.
emotions work, everything comes from unresolved hurt or pain. Okay. If you don't deal with your emotional hurt and pain in your life, it turns to anger. I mean, think about
Mhm.
anytime you're angry, I guarantee you were hurt first every single time. Even if you're driving in traffic and someone cuts you off for a split second, your thought is, I would never do that to you. Then it's whatever your freak out reaction is. Right.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
these are not big, intimidating people. They feel really small inside. They're showing their cards that they're miserable and unhappy and are
Mhm.
hurting. And what we
Mhm.
need to do is have our kids have awareness of that. And they can even think about the things that could be going behind the scenes that we'll never know about, that would contribute to that, whether it's their parents just got divorced, they have a parent that doesn't love them, everything from they could have been molested when they were a kid to
Mm.
a brother that beats them up, or whatever it is. These are all things that play into people being angry. And when your kid
Mhm.
can think about that, they can rise above the situation more. They can feel pity for this kid, that this is how they're going through life, rather than anger at what they're taking at face value. Now, we also need to build our kids' self-esteem. And even teenagers, they're just kind of really beginning self-concept. So it's important for us as parents. We know who our kids are. I recommend parents write down spend 10 minutes writing down the qualities of your kid, what they're bringing to the table, things that they've been born into the world with.
Mm-hmm.
loving, caring, hardworking, good friend, loyal. Like, take one off the list once a week and just drop it on them in passing. Hey, I was just thinking this about you. And your kid, if they're in middle school or high school, is going to go, okay. But inside, you're planting the seeds for
Mm-hmm.
self-concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
One off the list once a week. And when you get down to the bottom of the list, go back to the top. Just do it for years straight. Because what you're doing is you're expediting your kid figured out who they are. Because look, I mean, my mom told me growing up my whole life, you're gonna help so many millions of people, blah, blah, blah. And by high school, it was so frustrating and annoying because I didn't know what I was going to do or who I was yet. But I think a big reason why I am where I am is I became what I heard enough of, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
can definitely
Mm-hmm.
utilize that power of suggestion with our kid, but it's not suggestion when we're taking their characteristics and showing them, telling them who they are. Plus, what I like about this is so much of our praise for our kids is performance based. It's how they did in
Yes.
sport, how they did in school.
Mm-hmm.
And then the kids, as they start getting older, feel like I'm only playing well enough. I have to play well or do well in order to get affection, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
What I like about this is it's just random praise for them being them, which is what none of us get enough of today. And it helps
Mm-hmm.
them to develop their concept. And by that, if they can carry that in the front of their head everywhere they go, again, we're not trying to give kids a big head here where, the kids that brag about how great they are, the ones that overcompensate for feeling small and inferior, it's what I call quiet confidence, which is no one makes you the whole package and why, but you never have to brag or talk about it. But if you're combining those things and helping your kids see the kid for who they are, not what they're giving them, with resilience, with being in the moment, with being mindful of what they can and can't control. Now you start to see how what we've created on this platform actually really works for the majority of the population. Because
Mm-hmm.
there's stages that you need to layer these tools into, but when you can learn to do that, it actually makes you feel a lot better.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Well, thank you for addressing that. How can people find you going forward? Because I know people are going to want to be able to reach out to you.
Yeah, not a problem. The platform's created around the podcast, which is Raising Families with Dr. Jerry. You can get more information on Raising Families podcast.com. I also created a robust, dedicated YouTube channel that goes along with all this information that'd be great for parents and kids, as well as any and all social media channels, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. You can find me all over the place at Dr. Jerry Weichman. And if you need any help, we're at theweichmanclinic.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Just wanting to share my thoughts about my interview with Dr. Jerry Weichman. He is really just focused on resilience. And I find that to be so true, that is the buffer against mental health challenges. And the more that we can build that in ourselves and our kids, the more we're setting ourselves up for success. I also really love his approach with dealing with the entire family system. I can't tell you how many times parents come and say, here's this problem with my kid. Can you help them? And really, it's about looking at the whole family. We don't even realize how intertwined that we are. It's just the way that families are. We're constantly either triggering each other or giving off some subconscious cues. And we need to be able to as parents, have the skills and have the tools so that we can kind of either work on ourselves or work with our kids directly, since we're the ones that live with them all the time. And the last part I love about what he does is just how he pulls a whole team together to be able to help with any challenge for a teenager or even a younger child. And so that's really important to me to look at that kind of holistic perspective and see, can we get a consensus on what the real problem is? Because I've heard of so many families just kind of on a wild goose chase, going around and looking for answers and not always getting things solved. And so this seems to be the way to be able to do it all under one roof. And so I love that. And again, he just has a ton of great resources. So I definitely recommend reaching out if you're just kind of at the end of your rope and you don't know where else to turn, but you're just looking for some more help.
When you get a chance, please go to the show notes and click on the link ratethispodcast.com/tphmom to give my podcast a rating and review. And if this episode resonates with you, be sure to share it with your mom friends who are going through the same things. Be sure to tune in for next week's conversation. Until then, keep up the good work.